From the first moment we'd stepped off the transport ship and onto Nimue, Sigra had been telling us that David's death was clearly the result of a personal argument. I wanted to ask her what she meant by that. Who could have hated David that much? How did she know? Who was that violent? Why would they do this? But I kept my questions to myself for now and tried not to flinch every time Adisa asked something that felt completely unrelated or irrelevant. "What do you use this airlock for?" Adisa asked. This was the first assignment I'd worked with Mohammed Adisa. I knew him by sight and reputation, partly because operational security was a chummy clique of eager gossips, but mostly because there weren't many Martians working on Hygeia in any department. Adisa was average height, on the thin side of average build, brown skin, black hair turning to gray at the temples. 50s, divorced, burned out, so claimed the gossip mill. Should have left OSD a few years ago, kept going instead. I had expected to have a fight on my hands when I asked to join the investigation. Personal connections between officers and victims made for messy reports after all, especially if private lawyers ever got involved and started making noise about company liability. But Adisa had only shrugged and approved the request without asking why. Sigra glanced at the bloodied room, looked away. "Not a lot. Routine maintenance on the cargo system." She jerked a thumb upward. "There's a fuel line up there that's broken down a few times. Needs a walkabout every few months. But David isn't involved with any of that work." "Could he have been helping someone else, yeah?" Adisa said. "Don't know. It's not in the work logs." "Any trouble lately? Disagreement among the crew?" Sigra hesitated, then shook her head. "Not that they brought to me. They keep their personal problems personal." That meant nothing coming from a Station 4 person. The kind of trouble that caused real problems among the crew rarely reached the boss's ears, even on a crew as small as Nimue's, and that was mostly by design. Sigra knew the rules for succeeding as a Parthenope 4 person. Everything good that happened on the station was her doing, whereas everything bad was the fault of troublemaking crew. Should I get started? The question came from the third member of our team, the security tech, Avery Yu. They waited just outside the airlock with a crime scene kit and medical carry board. "Go ahead," Adisa said. Yu bobbed their head quickly. Such an easy and familiar thing for them to do in this unfamiliar place that I felt a pang of fondness. Yu and I had become friends, in a way, right after I'd started working for Parthenope. The kind of friends who used each other for company and sex and never talked about it. We hadn't spoken in several months, my fault, I supposed, although we had never talked about that either. When we had been hanging out together, Yu's constant nodding, agreeing, affirming had driven me crazy, but it was a comfort now. They stepped into the bloody chamber, avoiding the pooled blood on the floor, and got to work securing the murder weapon, documenting the scene, collecting physical evidence, scanning for fingerprints, all of which would be unnecessary once we had the surveillance recordings. But it was part of the OSD routine of acting like we served a purpose besides sweeping Parthenope's problems out of sight. Nothing we did ever made it into an Outer Systems Administration court. In the asteroid belt, corporate security was the only law that mattered. I tried to look away. I didn't need to watch. The blood, the ruin of David's face, the exterior door so close and the barren asteroid visible beyond. It all felt like a painful weight pressing on my chest. I could not look away. I could not even blink. The dead man looked nothing like the David I knew. He didn't even look like the man in the message. There was a small part of me, numb with denial, that wanted to believe it wasn't him. The David I remembered had been always in motion, tall, lanky in the way of men who run and swim and climb with enthusiasm well into adulthood. His white skin always tanned, with blue eyes and floppy blonde hair and a ready smile. This man's face was too soft, his hair too thin, his hands too aged for the passage of so little time. But he had the same bald patch on the top of his head, the same faint shunt scars on his left arm, just below the cuff of his sleeve, where osteo-regenerative drugs had been injected when he first left Earth. That had happened years ago, long before I met him. David had spent part of his childhood in an orbital habitat with diplomat parents who negotiated treaties between Earth and the independent stations. He was 45 years old, 8 years my senior, but in death he looked so much older. Was he the only one working that shift? Adisa asked. Far as I know, Sigrid said. He swapped with Mary. It was her night on.